Thanks for coming. All right, so I'm going to kick this off. Welcome everybody out there who is on Zoom. As always, this is East Liberty Park Community Organization's May community meeting that Tracy Aviary hosts for us regularly every month. So we want to say thank you to them. I am Christina Roth, and I currently serve as the chair of East Liberty Park Community Organization. In the room tonight, we have our secretary treasurer, Jeanette Young. We also have our 9th and 9th Business District liaison, Amy Albo. Want to say hello?
Hello.
Yeah.
So where's the...
Everybody in the room, remember that the owl follows you.
Oh, got it.
Is it actually going through the owl right now? So it may not be
break it
following
in?
us.
I broke it. Sorry.
Way to go, Amy.
No.
Yeah, no, it's working through the owl. Hello, David.
Hi.
Entering the room right now, we have our one of our board members at large. This is David Jones. Say hi, David.
Hi.
And we also have Marshall Bailey, who represents our East Liberty Park neighborhood.
Hello.
Coming in the door, we have Marnie Chandler, who represents our Gilmer Park neighborhood.
Hi, everyone.
That's the pretty people.
I think that is it for our tardy board member. Thank you for putting up with us.
You wanted to make a good entrance, Christina.
That's excellent. All right, so I am going to we're doing a little bit different meeting tonight because we have a lot to say, but we're going to try and get through this fast. So thank you everyone out there in Zoom who has joined us, and we will let people in as they come into the waiting room. So I'm going to start with letting you know exactly why East Liberty Park Community Organization exists. So ELPCO is an educational and advocacy forum formed for the discussion of issues relevant to its residents. ELPCO is recognized by Salt Lake City as a community council and as a nonprofit organization by the state of Utah and the United States government through the Internal Revenue Service. ELPCO is organized to involve citizens in identifying issues, plans, and projects that enhance the beauty, safety, health, welfare, vibrancy, and human scale character of all of ELPCO area neighborhoods, businesses, and historical and natural resources. ELPCO provides leadership in the investigation of community needs, informing and communicating with agencies in the effort to protect and represent the interests of the community, and working collaboratively with residents, community stakeholders, and other organizations. So I want to take a liberty as your chair tonight and say something really important. Okay, that's really important to me to say, and I think everybody in our community needs to hear this. As much as humanly possible, because we are simply just humans and volunteers, we do our very best to and attempt to represent our stakeholders as equally and equitably as possible without being swayed by undue influencers. Okay, so thank you for putting up with me saying this tonight, but I feel like the state of the world has sort of led us all to kind of forget that we are connected just like on a human plane. And if we can honor that a lot more, I think we'll do a lot better work in the community. And I also want to take a moment to really thank the East Liberty Park Community Organization Board for being so darn fantastic and so incredibly heartfelt and centered and thoughtful in everything you do. So thank you, everyone who's online and everybody in the room, and pass it on to our board members who are not here. Okay, thank you. Thank you for being here.
Thanks, Christina.
So one thing that, as an introduction, that we have done lately is that ELPCO has started a listening tour, door knocking survey of our neighborhood. And part of this is that we are doing a land inventory that to explore our land use issues from like the grand level up and mapping this, because when we started the TIP process, that's the Thriving in Place process, we started to notice that the census tract information wasn't matching up to the initial research done to propel the Thriving in Place proposals forward. And, you know, we all got together and worked hard to figure out how to support Thriving in Place. So now we need to go back and re-look at our own neighborhood and see if the data actually reflects what we see on the ground. So again, there's a lot of people that helped knocking on doors, putting things in people's mailboxes. I know that takes time, canvassing is hard, but we did get a lot of responses from those things. So again, I want to thank my board upfront on this meeting for taking that time and energy and walking around and knocking on doors and talking to people. So, okay, so let's see. The last before we start is that some things rose to the surface when we were talking to people. Number one was public safety and crime reporting. Number two was alleyways and fire lanes. No surprise. So the other, number three, was moving to the third place on the list this month is parking. Then street repairs and traffic calming. And finally, Roland Hall development was a concern to a lot of people, especially those folks that live in and around that area. And David, hopefully this evening we can, at the end of the meeting, we can talk a little bit about any movement you made on maybe potentially reaching out to their board on this, okay? So usually we have the first part of our meeting with the Salt Lake City Fire Department, Station 5, because they are a working crew, they can only come when they are not otherwise occupied. So I want to, on their behalf, without them not present at the meeting tonight, I want to let you know that Station 5 does have house a chat team, which is a very, very busy alternative response team. Remember back to when the more heavy trucks were moved down to Station 1 in order to accommodate the higher rise buildings and firefighting needs, right? So we haven't seen these guys in a while, but that just speaks to how busy that station is right now. And
Just saw their.
We
fire
just
truck
had to pull over.
as I got here.
exactly.
excellent, right? They're hard at work using your tax dollars, right? So one of the things that we've been working with, and we've actually been speaking a lot with both the people at Station 5 as well as Captain Jefferson, who is an old comrade, somebody I've known for a while, but also somebody who now really works on helping communities, public engagement, helping communities figure out how to best use that resource, both fire and medical. And we want to be very clear tonight. And again, I apologize for giving their speech for them, but since they're not here, or their presentation, we want to clarify that when you call 911 or 799, that is the dispatch for emergency response, right? There's two elements. There's the public safety, meaning the police, and also the fire department, which is fire and medical. Okay, so the reason why we have been reaching out to them and learning from them, and they have been so great, I just can't even tell you how great they've been, is because we have realized through these meetings that part of the problem is the quality, or part of the problem with getting a response from either 911 or 799, which actually gets routed through the same dispatch, is that people sometimes have a hard time giving a quality request or, making a quality emergency call. Oftentimes because their adrenaline's pumping, but oftentimes it just gets hung up in the fact that dispatch are also humans, right? And they're not the same human. It's not operated by a machine. So there's human error on both ends, okay? So we've been talking about how to train our constituents to provide better 911 or 799 calls. And 7999 is the non-emergency number to dispatch. So this has come up a lot because there are a lot of assault/battery incidents, meaning fights, as a result of living in a neighborhood with a very large high school. And there has also been several hit and run accidents in our neighborhood as of recently, which need medical attention. Okay, so the population of youth often around East High School wants nothing to do with authority, police, fire, adults in general, as we would expect all high school kids to be. You know, like kids are afraid of getting in trouble. So like even if they're hurt and injured, a lot of times they're gonna leave or they're gonna beat it because they don't want their parents to know, and they certainly don't want to get in trouble. And then there's potentially a whole other myriad of issues being like undocumented, unlicensed, and things like this. Right? So things that, you know, Captain Jefferson were very clear to us that, you know, the fire department, there are laws passed that the fire department looks past all of these things when they come to a scene for medical or an accident, because they, you know, they are there to provide care first. Okay. So, you know, there's the other issue of that, you know, we're a community of caregivers, parents and, you know, moms and dads and people who like, when they see fights and things happen, that might be really common in certain areas of the world, but it's certainly not common in most of our neighborhoods up here. So, you know, we worry about these kids and their health and well-being to the extent that, you know, like we may overreact, or we may not want to go out there, and we may not want to get involved because we don't want retaliation, you know, especially after a big fight with, you know, 30 kids or 30, you know, whatever hanging in. Okay, so,
And I would add, you know, people are also just getting harassed for speaking up. You know, within our neighborhoods, you know, against people who are vandalizing or not, you know, not having respect for private property, essentially. Sorry.
no, that's great. Thank you, Marnie, for, you know, feel free to speak, right? We're a small room. We have plenty of time for dialogue. You know, we're not dealing with the masses here. So, so the one thing that we did learn that would help, you know, with people who are very concerned, that if you do see something that looks like somebody is injured, whether they run or not, once the scene is cleared and there's no longer a reason to say, hey, can you send the cops? You can simply request medical. You know, there's no more violence or something in the area. You can just ask for medical to come. And if there is somebody injured there, they can also they can always refuse help from the fire department, but at least there's somebody there in case, especially a young person is injured to the extent that they need help. So let's see. The one thing that we were, well, actually, let me ask if there's any questions in the room or any questions online. Go ahead and feel free to raise your hand if you want to speak online. Anyone in the room want to make a question or comment? Okay, so
Christina, could I add one point of clarification real quick?
yeah, can I introduce you, Detective Follows?
Yes, of course.
So this is Detective Follows. He is our wonderful District 5 liaison to the fire or to the police department. Captain Jefferson did ask me to double check with Detective Follows on this to make sure this is absolutely the best practice approach that our community liaison would recommend. So you're on, Captain or Detective Follows.
Yeah, I'll take the bump. So yeah, I do just want to say one thing, and I don't think that's wrong by any means what you're saying. I just want to clarify one thing. It's likely or possible that if you do call in something like, hey, there's a kid that got injured, if there's any kind of like, even if the fire department arrives and they determine that it was because of a fight, most likely the police department is going to get called as well. Very likely. So just to throw that out there. And that's not a bad thing either, because essentially we can do the same thing as the police department. If they don't want any police action taken, when it comes to juveniles, we may have to like contact a parent, you know, and things like that. But for the most part, when when people don't want action taken as victims, like there's no law that says you have to be a victim, right? And so we can treat that the same way as well. So I would say the safest bet is if there's active fighting that's very violent and people are getting hurt, then call 911 and, you know, everybody can show up and deal with it. if it's something where you come across it, like Christina's saying, after the fact, and it seems like they need medical attention, then yeah, feel free to call and medical can go out and check on them. And if it's something that we need to be there, then either medical will call us, or generally medical will get on and say, hey, can you have the police department come out because we need them out here as well. So, because we also they have to take into consideration also their safety on scenes, depending on what the type of call is, right? And so generally they have the police department respond with them on calls for service that are injuries, due to, fighting, things like that. So just be aware of that as well. That's all I wanted to add to that point.
No, that's great. That's a fantastic clarification. And does everybody really understand what, the issue is I think that there's a difference between active fighting and then I saw a fight and here's the leftovers. And, that what we're seeing here is kids who really don't want our help, but potentially really need our help. So, thank you for the clarification. Any questions from the room?
So in the event that there is like a fight and then someone does need medical, like, am I correct in hearing that it's like, that the police would likely be called if it became known that it was from a fight? Is that what Dr. Paulus just said at the beginning there, right?
I'd say that, yes, that's pretty correct. Yeah.
So it's like if there's like a potential crime, then the police will likely be there, even if only medical aid is requested.
And I have a clarification too. What is the impact? I may not understand this, but if you call medical, does that kid, person, whoever, do they incur like an ambulance bill? Or is this a service that the city provides? And they'll come and check on people to a certain extent. Yeah, that's another question. I can see people saying, I don't want help for that reason as well.
Yeah, absolutely. People do that. Absolutely. And that's a good question. So, any service provided by the police department or the fire department is 100% free on scene, right? The only time there may be a charge incurred would be an ambulance ride to the hospital. So we're not even talking like you get in the back of an ambulance to get checked out by the fire department and then you get released on scene. As far as I know, and I don't think I've ever heard of it of there being a charge for that. The only time a charge would be incurred, I think is the word, is if you actually get transported to the hospital. And then generally, depending on like insurances and things like that. But especially if it was like a juvenile kid though, and then parents are gonna have to get involved if they're actually getting transported, right? Like that's gonna be something where parents would be involved. But
Well, unless
good question.
it's a major emergency, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
like-
Right, yeah, they'll just transport them, right? Yeah, if they need to go to the hospital, they're taking them to the hospital. They don't care who's,
right, that's,
they're gonna take them. Yeah, for sure. So, but yeah, no charges. And then especially on the police side of things, nothing we do ever, regardless, like even in my position where I go out and assess businesses and create PowerPoints, do these things, none of that is ever a charge ever. And realistically, the truth is you pay for it in your taxes, right? So like that's what you pay your taxes for. That's what covers, my job and the job of the fire department, and all these things. So the only time you'd accrue a charge would be if you were actually transported to the hospital in an ambulance.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, it's a great question.
great. That was a great question, Marnie. Thank you. All right, so are we good with this? Detective Falls will come back on later. He's the main show of the evening, really. So we're gonna move on from that to a quick question on whether or not there are any questions for our Salt Lake City Council person, District 5, from District 5, Darren Mono. And I'm going to make another little statement is that we have been receiving so many complaints about potential conflict of interest on behalf of our council person. Now, we're community council folks, and yes, we do work in land use issues. That's a big part of what we do. And, we're happy to just put a little bit of distance between ourselves and Councilman Mono, just basically because our constituents are concerned and worried, right? So I feel like it's just a good thing to do, just to maybe put a little bit of distance between ourselves and Councilman Mono, but that doesn't mean that we're not happy to pass on as many concerns or questions from our community as, people want to share with us. We believe conflict of interest is a matter for the Salt Lake City Attorney's Office, and we don't really know what's happening in detail behind the scenes. We might get whiffs and, you know, things that are more of a matter of public perception. And while public perception is important, you know, it's really the data and the facts that we are not privy to that count, okay? So, we just want to know, or we just want our constituents to know that we are always going to err on the fact of impartiality and really support their voices as much as we can, regardless of what concerns they have and who they work for and especially their what am I trying to say? Their resumes or any of that kind of stuff. We're just going to try and support as many people as we can. So I want to make sure that that we get a straw poll right now from all the board members at this table, that we are in line with this strategy to handling our communications with Councilman Mon. All in favor of this? Okay, it's unanimous from the people around the table right now. Thank you so much. And then moving on. We have our update from our wonderful mayor's liaison for District 5, Josh Ruboyo. Thank you for being here, Josh, in the room. We're so happy to see your face.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here in person. I was just at the Fair Park Community Council tonight. They had a visit from the Miller Group, talking about the Power District and the potential MLB stadium. So a very interesting meeting happening over there, very well attended, as you can imagine. So there wasn't as much for me to report on there because that was the focus of the meeting. So I was able to make it in person today. So the only thing I'd have is not too much is going on with our office. A lot of well, there is, but a lot of discussion is, you know, the council also. I'm talking mostly about the budget season, the budget proposal. So the mayor proposed the budget, the council's considering it. They had a public hearing this past Tuesday. And we have, you know, a lot of the entertainment, Smith, FEG and the downtown stuff happening. And we have the city budget, which is something that happens every year. So the council has to pass that by the end of the month of June. And so I would just encourage people to go on the city council website, look at the budget proposed and provide feedback through online comment forms or going to a city council meeting and providing a comment. And if there's questions about that, we're happy to take feedback and questions on the budget, but the council is in charge of passing it. And yeah, I think that's the main thing right now going on for us is just the budget. And then SLC mobile app. Right now, the city is also in the process of creating a new app to replace SLC mobile called My SLC. Which is the goal is to improve the response across departments and make it a more effective app platform that all departments are using. So that's still in development. A lot of us at the city are going to be helping with the testing phase of it. And so
What was wrong with the?
well, currently a lot of the cities moving to Salesforce as a form of managing resident requests, whether it be for fixing a street light or reporting an issue with an encampment. So having all that onto Salesforce, which is a CRM, a customer resource, management software that is used in a lot of other settings, but the city is implementing it and has been implementing it for a couple years. Right now, SLC mobile app requests that go on there don't go on to Salesforce, and so it goes onto a different platform, which then has to be worked separately, either through, city employees emailing each other or putting it on Salesforce. So there's just a lot of different places right now where requests go to, and sometimes lead to requests being overlooked or, maybe not being seen or resolved in a timely manner. And so that's the goal of creating a new app, is kind of integrating it to all one platform. So, in the meantime, though, I mean, nothing changes. Please use SLC Mobile to report things. And then if there's issues, follow up or to contact our office.
Yeah, is there a reason why it's like a new app? Is there concern about like the uptake on like installing a new app versus like just working on the back end, getting the Salesforce integration with the current app? Like, yeah,
Yeah, so the current app is not gonna integrate with Salesforce. And so that's a lot of the drive or motivation behind creating a new app.
okay. So they can't figure out how to.
Yeah, there's something
Yeah,
in there.
there's-
I'm not if you're really interested, and maybe we could have, more information on this from our information resource management people, at the city that kind of are software people that know a lot about how software works. I don't really know how it works, just understanding that there's a need for them to create a new app. But, so sustainability department is gonna be working on an e-bike incentive program. There was the lawn equipment exchange program for changing to with electric lawnmowers and trimmers, and there's gonna be one for a voucher towards buying an electric bicycle. So that will be launching in sometime next month, we believe. Be similar, sort of a lottery system where you go in and sign up and then maybe you'll get selected for a voucher, because we expect it'll be a high interest in that. So just watch for that coming up probably next month.
How many people are you doing vouchers to?
That right now, I don't know the number on that because sustainability is kind of in charge of running the program. Just sharing that info as a way to say, that's coming up. But it won't be a full, you won't be able to fully buy an e-bike with it. It'll probably be something like, $500 off or something, through or $250 on a voucher towards that. And then of course, they take equity issues into concern too, which is part of the reason they're doing the lottery system. So yeah.
Is there any interest of like doing like any alternate form of transit or like specific to e-bikes? Because you can probably buy a complete bike for $500 versus, a third of a lower end e-bike for the same amount of money. Yeah. So it's like essentially just alternative transport voucher
Yeah.
instead of like e-bike specific voucher. Yeah. And then do you know the budget instead of like the number, so the amount of money that's being allocated to it?
And so it was allocated in the last budget. You'd have to go back and look at the number of how much was put in funding for the whole program. But, that's a good question on whether other bikes are included. I think that it's supposed to be the county had an e-bike program sort of, and then other cities have done that. Similarly, Denver did something similar. That was very popular. And so it's kind of modeled after that. It's a smaller scale to start with and probably will expand, but
Salt Lake County did it too. They have already done a round of e-bike vouchers, so.
yeah. But that's a good question. I can look into that too.
Does anybody else in the room or online have a question for Josh?
I do. This is not meant to be, this is not meant to call out, but I saw the article this morning about the proposed salary increase for the city council, that would apply to the city council as well as the mayor. And honestly, it seems reasonable to me, that, for, I think, the amount of work that most of these people are doing for our community. That's my personal opinion, but I did wonder, can you tell me what are the talking points on why, what is the reason to go above other similar sized cities or there are larger cities right around us that where the mayors are paid significantly less? I just,
Yeah.
what is the city council, what is the speaking?
Yeah.
Can I actually ask a secondary question,
Sure.
just so that you don't have to answer it twice?
Oh.
So Josh, I was at the work session when the salary advisory boards recommended like the city council shouldn't give themselves raises this year. So can you also when you're answering this question, sort of work that into, because I know that was brought up at the formal meeting that I just sat on, that there was some discrepancy between what the board, the volunteer board recommended and what they decided to ask for in terms of their budget increase.
The volunteer board, meaning the compensation board?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm not aware, I didn't see that part, so I don't know the explanation of the discrepancy between what was recommended by that board and what's proposed.
Okay,
Other than just in general, the mayor has, through the past 2 years has looked at ways of increasing the pay for, city employees to attract better talent. There was a couple years ago that the, police officers received a raise and sort of a renegotiation on their contract in part to help attract and maintain or retain officers in the city. To a similar degree, that last year the mayor increased city salaries, employee salaries by 5%, is proposing to do the same thing this year to keep up with cost of living and to maintain and retain talent, working for the city's skills that are needed. So the mayor currently is, the way I understand it, about 16 towards the bottom of city department directors in terms of pay. So most department directors are earning more currently than the mayor. And so there has not been an adjustment in the position of mayor for over 10 years. I'm sure was in the article maybe as well. I don't know if that was in there, but right now, the mayor.
okay.
I thought it was, there have been adjustments, but not a market.
Not a market, it's called a market rate
in like 10 years.
adjustment.
But there have been salary changes during Mendon Hall's
Yeah.
administration, was my understanding, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. So the city tracks, salaries of various positions across the Wasatch Front to maintain, the market level pay and a competitive rate to keep people working. And so the mayor is, a position in the city. And so it's having a market rate adjustment. And so that's what the proposal is for. It would bring the mayor up in pay, of course, still would be below some other department directors in the city and below other cities leaders in the state. There are other cities who have a city manager
Mhm.
that often make quite a bit more. And so, there's numbers to point to. I think the mayor doesn't take the decision lightly, understands that, it's gonna look a certain way. But, similar to last year, it's proposing a property tax increase. It's not a popular thing. It's not something that people love to see. But these are some needed changes as the city grows and the needs for the budget and for the city's resources change. So if there's any further questions about that, I could help answer them, find information, numbers and things like that. But that's basically what I would say at this point.
So I have one question, is so you said the mayor is suggesting a 5% increase for city workers, but then a 26% increase for their own position. Is their rationale behind that particular discrepancy?
It's a market rate adjustment for the mayor and for the council, for all city employees, that 5% is the cost of living adjustment. So over the years, various other positions have had market rate increases. So there's been years where other types of positions have received a higher jump in a particular year because of that market rate increase. And so the 5% is just a base sort of cost of living adjustment.
Yeah, thank you, Josh. That was really helpful, especially helping us understand the difference between a cost of living increase and a market rate increase, because I think that is something that the devil's in the details, and that meeting is very important for us to talk to our constituents about, as always, the specifics are where the sugar is. So I also want to give you guys a little bit of full transparency. As your chair, I live a life, but I also have a separate life just representing myself. And we have been advocating in my family and in my community very highly for market rate increases to our police department and our fire department in order to make sure that we get the best around here in our city. Specifically because it came to our attention that we were losing so many of our public safety personnel to competition from not only cities close to here, but also into my home city of Boise. So that, you know, these details are really important and really interesting. And thank you so much, Josh, for going into details. Does anybody online have any questions regarding this agenda item?
I have my card here also, if anyone wants it, in case there's other questions or lingering issues that you might think of, feel free to email me.
I have one question that I don't know if it was brought up in the work session, or if you know the answer is like, was there discussion of decoupling? Because my understanding is that the city council members make, a quarter of what the mayor makes. And then was there discussion of decoupling that? Because like looking at it, from looking at area median income and like looking at the different types of roles, like in the type of like work, it would appear that maybe the mayor makes enough money just from a area median income of Salt Lake City perspective. Like you can live quite comfortably in Salt Lake City on $160,000. Whereas like, the city council makes a quarter of that, it's like 44,000. It seems like that should maybe almost be higher because it's like for representation, of different like backgrounds, you're gonna have a very particular type of person who is able to actually become a city council member. You know, when it requires like that amount of time for a part-time position. You need people who have certain types of jobs that allow for that type of thing. So it's like, there's a bit of like business owners or things of that nature. Was there discussion in the work session or anything like that of decoupling
Well,
that pay or anything like that?
not to my memory, right, because I wasn't actually paying attention to that decoupling concept isn't something that actually right now I'm able to completely fathom the concept. But however, there, you know, everybody in the room should know that that the city council positions are supposed to be part-time positions, right? So the pay is for a part-time salary. But I don't know, Josh, we don't hang out with them all of the time in the same way you do. I mean, from my perspective, it seems like it's way more than a part-time position in terms of hours. Do you have comments on either of these
I
questions?
think, I think it is. I know the time that they spend is a lot, and they sit in other boards and things like that related to the community, but I'm not aware of that discussion right now. I wasn't at the work session, and so I wasn't, I have to go back and look at that, but I think that's something definitely to advocate for if you feel that that should be done, at the city council as part of, you know, providing feedback to.
Do you know like whose purview that would fall under?
For
The decoupling of the salaries?
that would be the council's decision to,
But I think it kind of makes sense because they live here. Their taxes are gonna go up because they're
Yeah.
incrementally, by the individual, if they're giving a raise to the mayor. But they're also giving themselves a raise and they're also part of, the community that has to pay for their raises. So I don't know, I feel like that may help them keep things reasonable. It's like, it's almost a check and balance, but
Yeah.
everybody can game the system.
Yeah, I guess I almost wonder if it should be like half, because like I was kind of shocked to learn it was a quarter, like that it was a quarter of it, because I assumed it was like when typically when people say part-time, it's like that's conventionally 20 hours a week.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was kind of shocked.
Not anymore. I would, make a suggestion that if you are a standard citizen.
Yeah.
Especially a standard citizen who is not white and well-educated, that part-time is just 39 hours a week, just barely under 40 hours in the world on the streets. So, we could debate this, but we got to kind of move through the thing a little bit. Great questions. Let's talk about them later. Because I did have a follow-up comment for you, if that's okay. Did you want to introduce yourself? Because obviously you're not our standard customer here at Community Council.
Yeah, my name is James Allen, and I live in the area, and then my mom actually lives in I forget, it's like Edith Avenue, that like small little like cul-de-sac development, yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Oh.
and so I've like lived in the area like off of Emerson Avenue, like just over there. Yeah, and then
Above 7th East or below?
just barely, but between 7th and 8th East.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah, like when I went to school at the U.
Great.
So I left for a long time and then came back and then recently graduated and came back to town and wanted to be more involved in the community.
Oh, good.
We're happy to have you here. We're going to be like wondering if you want to join our board at some point, so we'll talk about that later. All right,
Do
well,
for a living. We need a doctor, just kidding.
I'm a doctor, but not that kind. Yeah.
Oh, are you? Okay.
But he is kind of funny.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
Okay, well, moving on with the agenda, I do also want to let you know that during the budget sessions that just happened on the 21st, we advertised that we would hope everybody in our community would feel free to either come to the meeting and or give budget recommendations online, which there will be another public hearing coming up on the 6th of June. Is that correct? I think it's the 6th of June. Yeah.
If that's a Tuesday, then it would be.
Yeah, so it was a very long meeting because they also had all the attendees that were coming to talk about the downtown redistricting, sports and cultural redistrict and the taxation process. So I did testify on behalf of ELPCO for a grant application to support public safety first responders mental health grant in order to make sure that those wellness programs are available from outside sources, not taxpayer sources, to help our first responders. And then we did also speak to the mayor's Vision Zero Task Force, on which I am very lucky to sit in on and be a part of. As you know, recently they passed the Connect SLC plan, which transportation has been working on with a lot of stakeholders for a very long time. This is a different kind of plan. It's a guiding plan, not a master plan like we've seen historically. But this, this is what contains the Vision Zero aspect of our community. So we did ask for some them to actually accept some grants that would also support the Vision Zero part of, funding for education and enforcement, part of those kind of things, as well as sidewalk improvements and lighting and things. So we will continue to support those grants because it's not taxpayer money to support safety regard in all aspects around the Vision Zero, specifically because we have so many Vision Zero issues in our neighborhood as we host East High School. And of course, youth car culture is fast and furious. So, and also kind of cool. So it's hard not to, it's not hard to see why they get involved in this kind of stuff. So, okay. Let's see, also regarding the mayor's office, just making sure we wrap this up here with you, Josh, before we let you go. Did you have any questions for us and kind of what we're doing or any suggestions?
No, I think you guys are doing great. And June 4th is actually the other city council meeting for the public hearing,
Great,
June 4th.
great. Thank you for clarifying it. Okay, one more. Oh, I have Cassandra in the waiting room. I don't know how long she's been here. Welcome, Cassandra. Can you hear us okay? Oh, she's joining. Can you?
I had a quick question. Is there a flip the strip program to the city's house?
It's through the county.
It's to the county.
Yeah,
Okay.
but if you search, just search it, I think.
Yeah, okay.
There's a page on the city website.
Fuller County, but, or North Salt Lake, but there's one through the county too.
It's the county, yeah.
And what was your question, Amy? Just so that the rest
Oh,
of
did
the.
the flip the strip program
Oh, okay,
through the county.
great.
There's even.
Okay, Cassandra's still joining. We can't hear her.
It's also-
Yeah, so can you just keep an eye on that, Jeanette, for us, please? If that's all right?
Yeah, I don't have the ability to let her in.
Well, it says it's joining, so just watch and see if she
Yeah.
pops in. All right, so I'm going to move on to the next item on the agenda, and we're moving right along. So, well, Ronnie, I'd like to introduce Ronnie Paceto of the Salt Lake City Public Lands, and she's joined today by Megan Jones Shiatani, who represents Dig Studios. They are both on our Zoom meeting. Can everyone see them okay? Yeah. Welcome, Ronnie. Thank you for being with us. Welcome.
Yeah, it is a pleasure to be here. The last time I was here was when we just released the results from the first phase of engagement for the Liberty Rotary Play Park. And so today I'm actually, and Megan and I will be discussing the actual concept designs. And so just a quick brief overview. We released those designs for public input on May 1st. It's going to be closing next Friday on May 31st. As far as number of respondents go, we've got over 1,000 respondents for this. So this is a really big milestone for this project for sure. So with that being said, I am going to let Megan kind of lead the rest of the discussion in terms of the design and providing that space. So.
Thanks. Yeah, I pulled this up, Ronnie, because I wanted to highlight that this is not the first round of outreach. Ronnie's been hitting the pavement for a while now, so we're just coming in at the second phase here, and that's what's continuing through this month. So we have concepts online. The survey is live. I know your time is precious, so we'll go through this as quickly as we can. And try to encourage you to see this in person here and come visit us. So we've got 3 different concepts here that are being explored for the playground, all of which incorporate components of the existing space. This is not a scrape and start over, but really an evolution of the play space that you see out there today. But I think will ultimately be quite transformative in whatever form this takes. Each one of the alternatives being explored draws from a space within the park itself. This is one of the unique components of a regional park like Liberty, is that this is a space families come not just for a few minutes before dinner. While we certainly have all of you and your families who might do that, we also have visitors who are coming from outside the Salt Lake Valley and spending, really making a Liberty Park day experience. And so that's a special chance to really tie to some of the existing spaces within the park and create a more holistic experience than is currently available today within the playground. So the first concept really builds upon the story of the Seven Canyons feature, which the Seven Canyons art piece. The second concept really builds upon the history of Liberty Park as a zoo, and now the Tracy Aviary. And the third concept looks even prior to the park's establishment as a public park space and builds on the history of the Isaac Chase Mill and in general food production throughout the Salt Lake Valley.
Which is right outside our window.
Right out the window, exactly, yes.
Right outside our window.
You can see it. So each park space, each playground space you'll see is quite distinct. And if you have a chance to take our survey, you'll see there's a lot of nuance to each one of these. And I think we've worked with our engagement consultant and with Ronnie to structure this in such a way so that we can really understand what's working and what's not within each one of these concepts. This isn't an all or nothing approach that we're taking with each of these. We really want to fine tune this to make it work and really bring some very special play experiences that aren't available elsewhere. So the first concept, again, drawn from the Seven Canyons feature is dubbed the Wonders of the Wasatch. And that really highlights the ecologies of the Wasatch Front in the Salt Lake Valley. The second is called Birdtopia, again, looking at the history of the zoo and now the aviary. It's pretty unique to have a playground space like this where you can actually hear exotic birds in the background, which is the case at Rotary. And the third is the Goofy Greenhouse. Again, this draws on the history of the Isaac Chase Mill and food production in the Salt Lake Valley. Sorry, bear with me as I try to jump through these. Here we go. So here we see the Wonders of the Wasatch. Again, this pulls from, really tries to highlight the ecologies of the Wasatch Front. The first space here is a really iconic Mountain Peaks climbing tower. I should note, and should have started this whole presentation with a reminder that the history of the Rotary Play Park is deeply rooted in accessibility and the legacy of the Paralympic Games that really springboarded the establishment of that playground in 2002. And so accessibility and inclusion is still very much at the core of each one of these designs. And so each one of these concepts while we're using some precedent images and some model images, as we get to the next stage of design, the execution of these will be very focused on creating spaces and play experiences that are accessible to all users. So this Mountain Peaks climbing tower here, you can see, again, it tells the story of the alpine experience within the Wasatch Front. As we extend towards the existing water feature, we've incorporated the river rapids climbing mounds that you see here, bringing some of that story of the water and watershed into the playscape, even when the water is off. Within the water feature itself, this concept builds on the existing system, but incorporates some more natural elements, so it feels a little bit more integrated into the landscape than the splash pad you see out there today, but could be done using much of the existing system. This next space, the Meadow Maze, at risk of previewing some of the feedback we've heard, this is actually one of the most favorited elements we've seen so far on the survey. The Meadow Maze is really an immersive space that is a landscape space, but utilizing some of the existing archways as climbing elements, and creating some moments for surprise, moments for quietude, in particular for those users and individuals who might have sensory sensitivities or be not quite interested in getting into the thick of the high intensity play. This is a space that we see being very successful in other playgrounds we've built elsewhere. Based very much in the first round of outreach, you'll see a version of a zip line in each one of these concepts. This was a highly desired element in the first round of engagement. In this case, it's a double zip line using some natural materials. We've got a soft turf story time room here. Unlike a lot of neighborhood park spaces, we really know that we need to accommodate bigger groups here at times. We need to accommodate the field trip, the classroom, the story group, or from the library, or the poetry reading. And so you'll see a different execution of this in each concept. In this case, it's a soft-scaped amphitheater type space. We've got again, this is an all ages and all abilities playground. The game room in Hammock Grove is certainly a space that would be deeply loved by the 2-year-old to the 20-year-old. And then we've incorporated a water pump and play table and expanded the existing sandbox play within the park, knowing that's a special feature that's not available at all playgrounds, and is really an important play experience, in particular for younger kids or those, again, who might not have the appetite for the big high-risk play. We've also incorporated a loose material and building and sorting area. Again, this is a very natural approach to play experiences. We see a lot of enrichment coming from play spaces like this, and a lot of interest from communities. The second option, our Birdtopia, again, really plays with the history of the aviary and what you see outside your door. Using some of the existing grading on the site, we think we can incorporate a natural mound and embankment slide. These are great for younger kids or those who might have some mobility issues or just want to have that slide experience without climbing the big tower. Even if they may be physically able to, it can be a little intense. So these softer mound slide elements can be a nice complement to that. In this case, our classroom space or large gathering space is a little less formal. We've called it the Learning Burrow, a natural classroom and building laboratory. This nest type space or small burrow may also incorporate some of those loose materials for building and construction, but also is a space for a group to sit quietly and participate in a classroom type program. at the heart of the playground here, again, using the existing water feature infrastructure, we've incorporated more mist-based elements. One of the opportunities here is this can really have a larger cooling effect along the across the playscape. And I should note, in each one of these, we are hoping to work with the water feature consultant to incorporate an on-off switch. There has been a lot of water use at the park, and while there's still limited hours of use, because right now there's a scheduled on-off time for the water feature. In the future, we hope to be able to actually incorporate a manual component. This is really fun for kids because they actually get to control the water feature themselves, and it's much more efficient because you don't have water running when nobody's using it. But in this concept, you see mist being incorporated into that to create that fog cloud-like moment where you can actually transition from that buried, burrowed ground experience up into this next space that we see here, which we've dubbed the flight path. This is a fully accessible walkway that brings you up to a high elevation slide, but also brings in some of the existing sound elements and potentially some additional ones to an elevated deck space. So for those kids who or users of any age who may not want to go down the slide, there's really a great destination at the top of this feature, and that's a space to play music, to look at, really to be integrated into that fantastic tree canopy that we love about Liberty Park. In this case, the zip line is a little bit different. This is more accessible, could potentially be used with multiple users, group swing style zip line. These are great for those who might have mobility issues and not be able to support themselves in a sitting position. They're a little bit more flexible. We really are excited to, again, use a lot of the existing structures that are out there. Some of those include some smaller swing bays, which are right now the location for the inclusive swings. In the future, we hope to integrate the inclusive swings with the traditional swings, so they're no longer segregated, which frees up some of these smaller swing bays for some more specialty type swings, like what you see here with the rope or hammocks or more social swings. In this concept, again, we're still incorporating that sand-based play that's so special here at Liberty, but really building it around a sand table. There is a sand table out there today, but again, it's another element that's an accessible piece that's separate from the non-accessible. So in this case, we bring that sand table directly into the at-grade sand, so that those who might need to roll up to a sand table are playing in the same space and having the same experiences as those who are using it at ground level. And I think this is the last image on this one. We've got this wavy walk. This is something we've seen be very successful in play spaces. And what's special about it is we can actually incorporate it around some existing well-established trees. So this is one opportunity for us to bring that great canopy into the playground without damaging potentially the drip line areas under those great existing trees. These wiggle walks are so fun. They're so great for a strider bike, a wheelchair, a parent pushing a stroller, you name it. Even just, ripping it while running. They're just a great feature that we see attract a lot of activity. This last concept, again, if you look out your window, you'll see the Isaac Chase Mill. Doesn't just start at the Isaac Chase history, however, really does try to look at food production throughout history within the Wasatch Front. So it actually starts with an ancestral agriculture play garden. Some of the spaces we've suggested here might be a maze, or even popcorn trampolines. These are another component of the survey that we're seeing a lot of interest in. This is a chance to really start that storytelling experience with an acknowledgement of the ancestral stewards of this space. As you head further north within the play space, the kind of central climbing tower would be our grain elevator, we've dubbed it. Again, utilizing an accessible radial walk to provide full ADA access, even to that high elevation climbing experience. In this case, it might be executed in a slightly more industrial way and kind of play off of the conveyor belt aesthetic. As we research the history of the mill itself and grain milling in Salt Lake, there's a great record of grist millstone patterns, and each one of these millstones, this image you see on the top left, utilized a different grain pattern in order, depending on the type of meal that was being ground. So this is an opportunity to just use some beautiful geometries, but that actually tell an important story about agriculture and food production. And so as we look at these, it's a great translation to some spaces like these spinners or Springer boards, where we can actually maybe have a millstone garden, we've dubbed it, of these different types of round millstone play features. We've got a flower scale seesaw. At the center of this park space, a little bit more integrated into the water feature. The kind of primary larger group gathering space here is a pavilion that really draws its silhouette from the historic mill house. It becomes a really great shade feature, in particular for those caretakers or family members who might need a central space to sit so you can see one or two or however many kids you're responsible for and stay cool, be a little bit more integrated into that water feature without having to actually get wet if that's not up your alley. Lastly, as we head towards the northernmost end, the image on the top left you see here is an image from Paco Sanchez Park here in Denver that Dig Studio completed a handful of years ago. We've worked with a regionally based artists who can create these really abstract forms where your imagination really is the only limit on what these forms can be, but it utilizes a material that doesn't absorb heat. It's very soft and comfortable, and could potentially allow us to incorporate some more sculptural elements like our bread loaf tunnel, toast balance boards, or even some barrels and grain piles. As we head to the south here, and again, maintaining some sand components here, Ronnie, I know, has done so much outreach with the community and has seen firsthand just how much kids love to bring water from the water feature to the sand. This actually allows that to happen in a more integrated way. So potentially using the sluice gates and water wheel systems to educate kids on how grain manufacturing works, but also just allows you to get wet, get dirty, and have fun. These last pieces are these smaller versions of our mill house pavilion. These are little farm stands. These are spaces for imagination play and are intended to be somewhat abstract because they might be a lemonade stand, they might be a farmer's market, they might be a sorting station. They really can be anything, but are really sized for those smaller scaled users and accessible for those in a wheelchair as well. Tried to go as quickly as I could, Ronnie. But here we are with our schedule. Again, we're out on site tomorrow from 4 to 6 p.m. and again on Saturday from 11 to 1. And hope to unveil a preferred concept on July 18th when the Special Olympics Inclusion Festival will be held at Liberty Park.
Wow, that was fantastic, really informative and helpful. Megan, thank you so much. So do you have any message that you want us to share on social media? We'll bump up that post again to remind people to come on out and chat with you Friday evening and Saturday. Is there anything else that you would like to, you think we can help get this message out?
Yeah, I think you all have done such a wonderful job. I don't really have any additional requests at this moment in time. If anything, I just want to be able to, allow people to give their feedback. So there'll be another board where kids are able to put stickers on it and to like say, I like this or I don't like this, or, caregivers and so on and so forth. So really just trying to provide multiple forums where people are able to give their feedback. So, yeah.
We have a question in from the room.
What's the online, comment site?
Can you put that in the chat, Jeanette?
Yeah.
Can you guys can also put it in the chat if that's okay. Can you see the chat from there? Ronnie?
Got it. Megan, do you mind if you could kind of share? Okay, awesome. She'll put it in the chat for you.
Okay.
Can you verbalize it for me?
Yeah.
Get with the technology, David.
Just quicker. Tell me what it is.
I'm trying
Yeah,
to remember exactly what our website is.
right. So it's
I can say it. Do you want? It's www.surveymonkey.com/r/P3XXWY2.
if you just type in Liberty Playground in the Google search and then you go to the project website, it's located in there. So all
Right.
updates are located through that project website, if that's an easier mechanism for you.
Awesome.
Amy, you have a question.
Well, I just am curious, so far, what do the kids like the best? So far from what you've heard.
Sneak peeks. We want the
They
insights.
They really like Wonders of the Wasatch out of the three, and then additional features that they really like are the zip lines. That is their heart, and they've made that known for me from the beginning. So that's something that they really, really love.
Oh, that's interesting. Huh.
Yeah.
So for any of the older people in the room, do we remember when there were zip lines in that little space right here next to the big Ferris wheel and things? Do we remember that little area back when our kids were little?
Yeah, I played on those with the nets.
Yeah.
It
Like, yeah,
was not
our-
accessible.
Yeah. Our hoodlums loved that though, because it simply was not accessible. It was very much for, skilled folks. So, yeah.
Great.
All right, well, thank you for the presentation and thank you for waiting for us as we had a little conversation here. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Okay, so now we're moving on to the man of the hour, Detective Follows, and we're really happy to have Detective Follows here because as I mentioned before, when we were, we just started this process, this listening tour, knocking on doors, talking to folks, and the number one thing that's coming up in East Liberty Park is crime and public safety, right? So we have been having a lot of issues around East High School. We're not going to focus on that tonight because we are working closely with our liaison officer as well as many other folks involved, the school district, the mayor's office on these bigger issues. But we do have a list of concerns that have come to the table that are just simple questions, and then we'll listen to the community and see what their questions are. But in the meantime, welcome, Detective Follows, and we know you have some things to share with us that before we take the questions.
Yep, absolutely. We'll kind of dive into some crime stats for the neighborhood for the last few months since we haven't met for a second, and then I'm going to give a couple of quick updates, and then we'll take any questions anyone has, and then the questions that you have as well, Christina.
Are you able to share the screen? Well, can you share your screen?
I'm not sure I know how to do that.
Okay,
But if you want to, do you want to pull up the crime website and pop it up on can you do that?
I actually have saved a. Thank you. Good evening, Joshua. I actually did a little screenshot of it earlier. Gosh, this is very telling how many screens I keep open at a time. But I don't think I can expand it. Oh, this is the wrong one. Actually, I don't have. Let me pull it up.
And then while you're doing that, so just to give a quick update, because it has been a couple months since we met, we do have a new website, and we've talked briefly about it. Essentially, this website is everything is in-house now with the police department. So before it was kind of being managed outside, the compiling of the crime stats. And so now all that's being managed in-house by our own people that we have in the police department. A couple of differences you'll notice is that, on this first version that they've rolled out, and this was rolled out in February, they don't have all of the part 1 and part 2 crimes like we used to have in the old website. So right now, as they wanted to get crime stats out to the neighborhoods, they rolled out just basically the main violent and property type crimes. And so it still gives a pretty good snapshot of what's going on for like the more important type calls that we want to track for the police department itself. For the neighborhood, you might be interested in other things, and they will be adding other offense types in the coming months and things like that, but they just wanted to get this out to the public now. So
On that note, let me let everyone know what you're looking at here, because it's really quite cool. So this is the main page for the now open data source for our crime stats. And we can go to our own community council district, click on it, and actually hit East Liberty Park. So this actually really does delineate between our boundaries and the rest of the city. So just a quick shout out. We got to meet early on the rollout of this new page with Chief Brown. He invited the community council leads down to talk to him and meet with their stats, their new technology folks. And they really listened to us and kind of what we needed. So can you pass on another thanks from us? Okay.
absolutely.
All right.
Yeah. So what we're looking at are and you're clicked on April, right? For month of April.
Well, so I'm clicked on, yes, it says it's selected month, April 2024, and then there's the year to date from January 1 through April 30th, 2024. So,
Perfect. Yeah. So go ahead and leave it on that screen for now.
Mhm.
So essentially, when we look at the neighborhood, you know, we do get some violent crime from here and there, and it's something to keep track of for sure. You can kind of see if you look at the year to date, for the current year, we're up more than we normally are for sure. But if you look at the overall, we're basically kind of breaking even, but all the green is a really good thing that we like to see. We want to see all the green. The red is not as good, right? Those are things that that means that specific crime type is going up a little bit. And keep in mind that 100% seems like a lot, but it's because it was 1 compared to 0, right? So again, if that was like 15 or 20, then that would be like super concerning. So you do have to kind of take the numbers with a grain of salt and just make sure you're actually looking at like what they are, because sometimes the percentages aren't super accurate of a snapshot of what's actually happening. So just keep that in mind. But anyway, when we look at the year to dates, all property crimes are down, and this is pretty much the trend throughout the city right now, which is awesome. When we kind of look back on the month-to-month comparison, you can see like in 2020 we had 35 total crimes in the month of April in ELPCO in 2020, and you just see that really nice steady decline on the left-hand side there, going from like 35 to 30 to 22, 18, and then 11 for this year. So, and those are all the month of April in each of those years, right? So, as we start to get warmer and the weather gets warmer, we're gonna have more people out. We're definitely going to see increases in crime stats. But what's good is that we're seeing an overall decrease. And that's where we look at the year to date, right? And so again, 2020, we had 152 total crimes between January and April of 2020. And then you just see that really nice steady decline to where we're at 57 for the month of for the year of 2024, year to date, right? And so if we want an accurate year, you can click on 2023 in December, and that'll kind of give us an accurate snapshot of like a full year of crime in the ELPCO neighborhood. But anyway, just for the year to date though, which is kind of more what we're looking at, we see that nice steady decrease. So when we look at the actual crime stats themselves, we do tend to get more thefts and things like that as quantity of crimes that are reported on for this purpose. And so it's just like a good reminder for the month, for the warmer months, just bring in, make sure you're not like leaving bicycles out at night. If your kids have bicycles, just throw them behind the fence in the backyard, or put them in your garage, or put them away somewhere safe where, at least they're not visible and can easily be taken. I personally this can seem like overkill to some people. Like for me personally, like even if you're doing your yard work, try not to leave your garage, wide open if you have a garage. Some people tend to do that. We have had a few thefts, more recently where someone like put down their trimmer, turned around, walked to the backyard, came back and it was gone. So I'm not saying that necessarily, you have to be that vigilant, but it does happen from time to time. So just be aware that as we get in the warmer months, things tend to, the crime goes up for sure. So just be aware of that, especially when it comes to like property crimes and things like that. Did you have something, Christina?
Well, I mean, when you're done, I'm not gonna interrupt you. Go
Oh, no,
for
you're
it.
good. I just looked like you were saying something. My bad.
Yeah.
I'm looking closely with my old person eyes.
No problem. So, are there any questions on the stats or like how to kind of look at those or read those?
I don't have any questions. I've got a comment. I think, I mean, if it's, looks to me like the year-to-date comparisons are the lowest in the past 7 years. So
Yeah,
thank you,
certainly.
police department, for whatever you've done. Maybe
Well,
the community is, I don't know, what the
Yeah.
reason for that is, but it's nice that the crime, at least in ELPCO, is reported as being the least in the past 7 years.
How accurate do you feel this is, the Detective Fellows? I just know in doing some of the listening tours and talking to people, and even on my very, very own street, people don't feel, they don't even feel it's worthwhile reporting
Mm.
things because they haven't had responses in the past. And I know it's a numbers game. I mean, I know you have to have data to drive the resources. I get that.
So I guess, I'm gonna ask, Marnie and I have been dealing with this a lot because, meet Marnie Chandler, who represents our Gilmore Park Community Officer Follows. So the question we're getting a lot, especially from the Gilmore Park community in general regarding property crimes, is like, are these reported crimes? Or are they actually convicted crimes in terms of property stats?
These are reported, not convicted. I mean, it would include convicted crimes, but these are all crimes reported to us from the neighborhood, from the ELPCO boundaries. So, and a good point is brought up, right? You can have like some of that reporting fatigue. And so I say, it is something that I want to address tonight too, that we were going to address, as well as like what could seem like a lack of response may just be maybe a little bit education. And sometimes things, for instance, the church in Gilmore Park, was a big issue, right?
Can we like focus on, before we go into that in detail, I'm sorry to stop you in your tracks, but I was just wondering if we could stay with the statistics for just a second, because we do have questions about the statistics, and then we can move on to our conversation. Is that okay with you, Detective Follows?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I think it was related to the statistics, just how you feel that, how do you guys think reporting is going based on what you're seeing?
Okay, well,
What is,
can I ask you a question, Marnie? Because I'm a little confused. I feel like what you've been expressing to me is that your neighbors are calling in and they are
I'm
reporting.
getting a text message from a neighbor right now.
Right, but they are
Okay.
not showing up here on these crimes in terms of property calls in. So this is just like, we were wondering what this discrepancy might be if you know, in terms
So
of
you're
only
saying
reporting.
they're calling in to the police department or they're texting you saying I had a problem?
They're calling to the police report. The
What
department.
are their, maybe that's not a category.
We are
here.
directing
What
them.
what is the complaint?
Well,
they're
that,
calling in for?
the complaint is just perception of some of our residents that it's not worth reporting.
Like, what
because
is the crime though?
you-
Is it
Oh,
car?
Yeah, so theft, break-ins,
Oh,
burglary, we had that woman hit.
Wait, okay, well, that's a different thing. So right now we're talking about property crimes. So like what
Sorry,
we're
yeah.
hearing from this community, just to stay on task, is that that they have called in reports of break-ins to garages and cars and different things like this. And that we're not seeing on this stat. And also, I can't, no, it was garages and cars, so is there just
So,
some
are you getting
reason why these
reports?
things maybe wouldn't show up?
Are you all getting reports of this happening? And like, how do you know that they're calling us to follow up and make a report with the police? Because what you
I'm
just,
not, I don't know.
what you just said was they don't feel it's worth calling, right? And so,
They call and I am asked, I'm telling them what to do, that
Right.
it needs to be reported. Because
Right.
you know, they will resource where people go. People don't feel that there's, the people that honestly around me don't feel that there has been a response. And I'm not blaming the police department or the, you know, it's just and I remember moving back to Utah after being gone for 8 years. I remember that like the police didn't come for anything unless someone was like bleeding, dying, or, you know, something really serious. And maybe that's just how we're resourced these days. So I'm not even, I'm not saying it's the police fault. I'm just expressing to you that a lot of the people that I live by, where crime is happening to our properties, harassment, and people are saying, oh, they won't even come out when a drunk driver hits me. Why would they show up when people are ringing my doorbell at midnight? When my husband's out of town and, you know, shocked, you know, I don't know, that, I know that's a small thing, but
Well, I
Yeah,
mean,
that
thank you for
makes
your
sense.
comment,
it's
Marnie.
harassment.
So,
nonetheless.
Yeah.
so also just on these lines, we did have the 3 separate vehicular, what the newspaper is reporting as attempted murders this year in our neighborhoods. And are those showing on here anywhere?
No, because we're not. So let me clarify on the stats we're looking at. And again, I kind of talked about this, right? We're not talking about every crime that happens in ELPCO because we're not reporting this specific report that you're looking at does not report on every crime in ELPCO. So you can see the crime types, right? It's criminal homicide, rape, robbery, all other, ag assault, non-family, and then burglary, all there. So criminal homicide is a homicide that has happened, right? Not an attempted
Right.
one where someone died. So you're not going to
Perfect.
see the 3 attempted homicides because again, for the reporting purposes for the neighborhoods, we report on the FBI statistics, right? And then eventually they're going to start adding in more of those part 1 and part 2 crimes, right? And so then when they add in the more, it might give a better snapshot of like what's going on. But there's a little bit of a disconnect for what we're looking at compared to like what's going on, and I get that. And the reason for that is for just a couple of things that you is it which one's Marnie? Sorry. You,
Morning,
Marnie.
hi.
Sorry. So Marnie, you mentioned like harassment, right? And that's 100% valid, but that's not going to show up in these statistics we're talking about tonight, or in this graph, excuse me. So
Thank you.
there, it doesn't mean that it's not a valid thing. It just means that like for the reporting purposes, we're trying to get
You
a
have to
bigger
meet the
snapshot of like,
criteria.
yeah,
of the
like
report.
violent crime compared to property crime. And it doesn't mean we don't track those things though, for sure. And so, when we're looking at like, because what I guess what I wanted to clarify was like, they don't want to call because they don't feel like they're getting a response, right? Because of times past. Is that correct? Like they've called in the past
They
and then they feel like,
don't get any response.
and so now they're just
Nobody
like, I'm not going to call
even
and report it.
calls. So what's I mean, I get it. Yeah, you're gonna get, I'm afraid that people will become vigilante a little bit. And we've had it on I live on Harvard. You might know the vigilante I'm talking about. A couple years ago, we had someone shoot someone who kept breaking into their house. And they shot him as they were running away, and that person went to jail. As they probably should, but I'm just saying, we need to be, even in these nicer neighborhoods, you know, the calls are not feeling like they feel, people say that it's not worth calling. It will, and they're not getting a response when they
Yeah.
have.
So I think, and me and Christine have talked about this a little bit, and it is one thing I wanted to cover tonight. So, this is something that I'm working on, that I will kind of be working on the back end with like my lieutenant and my captain, because it's going to take some, I'll give a good couple of examples. This is what I talked to Christine about. And this is a good example to kind of give you an idea of like what your average patrol officer deals with, right? So let's say you call in a harassment because there's some high school kids that were kind of yelling and screaming at you or something like that. So it's definitely in that moment for you very frightening, right? So you go in your house, you lock the door, you call the police, and at the same time we've got a bunch of other priority calls going on, right? And so then let's say I get dispatched to that harassment, right? So I'm going to that harassment, and I'm going to check the area for those individuals that were harassing you, and let's just say I can't find them, right? But while I'm checking the area, now a robbery comes out on the other side of town, so I'm like, oh crap, I gotta go. So from a patrol officer's perspective, they're just going to be like, hey, that call was gone on arrival, cleared out, I'm on my way to the robbery. And so then you're like, what the heck? Like, nobody called me back, no one told me what happened, nobody anything. So what I want to work on as the liaison is kind of bridge that gap a little bit of like, hey, let's have the officer, like, let's remind our officers, like, if the complainant is asking for a callback, and this is going to be dual sided, right? If the complainant is asking for a callback, then we need to give them a callback, even if it's later on, a couple hours later, like, because we have to go to a more important call. We still need to give a call back and say, hey, just so you know, I checked the area, I didn't see those kids. Did they actually like assault you, or like what exactly happened? What would you like me to do? What can I do to help you? You know, that would be, obviously someone would feel much more heard, right? If that happens. So, and that does happen. So don't get me wrong, but
Yeah.
what happens is especially on like an afternoon shift, when you do get like those hours where high school kids are coming out of class and things like that, and that's when the things are happening, our afternoons are popping off. So like, I'll give you an example, and it hasn't been this bad in a while, but like and
You
yeah,
don't have to justify that
no,
whatsoever. I actually, I'm a
just want to
nurse, so
explain it.
I want you to go help the people who are
Yeah, of
most
course.
hurt, like
Absolutely.
hands down.
Yeah.
I totally understand that. And I think most reasonable people do. And if,
Sure.
I guess if the answer is, those less, if I can at least pass something on, those things that don't involve immediate danger of person, they may never get followed up on until they reach a certain threshold. Would that be a
Possible.
true statement?
That would be a possibly true statement. Yeah.
Okay.
It's not that we're not responding to the call, and it's not that we don't care, obviously, but it's
Yeah.
just like that situation I gave you, right? Like a more
Yeah.
important call comes out, and in my head, I'm like, I got to go. So I just clear that call out that I was
Really
just
makes
on
sense.
and head out. Right. And so, but what I do want to do though, is when we have the opportunity, because I also don't want to tell you that, because I did this myself in patrol, where you just are like, they want to call back, but I need to, I've got to go to something else. And I could have called them back, but it's like, I'm going to go do something else. Like, that's not okay. Right. So that's something I want to work on myself with my department of like, hey, if you have time and you can give them a call back, please do it, because it's important. Right. And so that's what I'm going to work on with my lieutenant and my captain. And that's completely valid, that you get a call back if the officer is able to do it. Right. There's no reason they shouldn't be doing that. So on the other side of that coin, though, if you can convey this to your neighbors or whoever else, as well, that to ask dispatch very specifically, like, hey, usually dispatch will say, do you want to call back from the officer? Generally, they ask that question, but
Yeah.
make sure that you all are saying, hey, I want to make it really clear. Like, I would love to get a call. I want to call back from the officer because I want a disposition of some kind of like what's going on, so that I know, like, at a minimum, like, hey, were they able to make contact with someone, So, and that's okay. You can do that. And then it's kind of on our end to like manage
Follow
that.
through.
Like, yeah, exactly. Yep.
Relationship.
So yeah, and I just make sure that people know that as well. So, because if you don't ask for a call back and dispatch doesn't clarify it with you, our policy, as far as I understand with dispatch, is it just automatically is like, we don't call the complainant. Because again, sometimes we go on calls, a call comes out at 10 p.m. We go on that call at 3 a.m. If my complainant didn't ask for a call back, I'm not calling someone at 3 a.m. and waking them up to be like, hey, that kid that might ring your doorbell, yeah, they're gone. Like, I don't want to do that. So, but if you want a call back, like I've always done as a patrol officer, like those, even if it's 3 a.m, if they asked, I'll wake them up because they asked for it. So
Yeah.
I'll call them and be like, okay, they want me to call them, so I'll call them. So it it's a complicated issue, but I'll definitely work on it with my captain, my lieutenant. Like, hey, we'll put out some kind of like a reminder training. We have lineup trainings that we can do. Like, hey, just a reminder, if someone asks for a call back, take the time to call them real quick. Even if it's like a 5-second call, like, hey, I'm sorry, I have to go to another important call. I just want to let you know, I checked the area. I didn't find them, or I did find them. I was able to identify them, like whatever happens, right? Like, give a call back. So I will be working on that as well.
Okay, I want to make one clarifying point in this, I'll know about the spider texting services now. So when you're making a call then they will text you a response that says, this was the number for your call. You should get it to whatever phone you left as the callback number. And I do honestly think, as per all the conversations we're having, to talk to follows, is that we had a big incident in west of East again today. I asked for a callback. I never got it. But I do think since the Spider app has come around, we see far less follow-up and callbacks,
Okay.
which is really important in the chronic issues that we're solving. Something that's acute, that's not going to happen again, maybe not such a big deal. But if we're following and tracking, really chronic issues like, very high-speed driving around school access, then those discussions and stats are going to be a little bit more important. Before I take any more questions from the room, though, I want to give you the love you deserve. This has been a really complicated issue that we're dealing with, not only behind schools in the neighborhoods, but also far-reaching to Garden Park Ward, in which we'll get into these details. But Detective Follows has put up with me over and over and over, just, drilling for information to see how we can do better and how we can promote better safety in our neighborhoods by communicating with the mayor's office, the city council, transportation, and, most importantly, the school district. So thank you. Right now, I'm gonna stop gushing on you and ask, I think there's more questions in the room.
Sure.
I had a question.
Yeah.
Is something that you're looking into doing, with your lieutenant? It sounds like that may, like, could there be something done, like, from a logistical standpoint to, like, make it easier for the officers from, like, a workflow perspective to, like, recognize that a callback has been requested? Like, I don't exactly know, like, the workflow on, like, how things go with like closing out reports or closing out calls, but if there was some kind of a reminder, because I could see it's like there's a lot going on, there's a lot of stress involved, and then you, like, I don't exactly, is it just like purely like memory based that it's like they need to remember that someone has to call back, or it's like from a logistical workflow perspective, like that could potentially be something to look into, or if that's something you guys have already like looked into.
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. So it's not from a memory. So what happens is when you call into dispatch, they create a call log, and that call log pops up on my computer. And then when I get dispatched to it, it pops up in another area where I can see my dispatched calls that I am going to, or that I've been dispatched to. And then in that call log, there are what we call call notes, and that's where dispatch is putting information. So when you call in and you're like, hey, my vehicle just got hit by another vehicle. I'm at 13th East and or 7th East and like 13th South, and the vehicle's a red Mazda, whatever. All those notes get put into that call log, so that as me, when I'm responding as the officer, I can go through and go, oh, okay, I'm looking for a red Mazda 4-door with this plate on it, right? And then when you, as the complainant, say, hey, I want to call back from dispatch, from the officer, dispatch should put in a call log note that says complainant wants contact, right? This is a common thing that we know to look for. Again, so, and you got to remember, we're a department of 600 people, and any job, right? You've got some people that do their job really well, some people that are a little more apathetic about the job and just like, and so unfortunately, like, the police world is no different than any other job. You've got both kinds. So there are some people that don't ever call back complainants, and that's something that I want to work on, to like, hey, let's fix that culture a little bit. And then there's some where, like, the issue that we talked about before, where it's like, no, we got to go to another call, so we just don't have time. And then there's some that just, like, we're human, so there's human error to it, right? Like, we forget or things like that. So,
Yeah.
but there is a call note that says call complainant back, and it's in the log notes, and you can see it. And generally, dispatch will even give it out over the air. Complainants waiting, asking for a call back. That's a pretty common thing. So,
So you would say err on the side of requesting a callback, so the message was actually totally received.
yeah, and sometimes, and I don't get to hear what dispatch says to complainants. Like, it's not, I don't like
Yeah.
have any control over that. But if you get a dispatcher, because I have heard this before, and I 100% believe it. It's just unfathomable to me, but I believe it. If a
Yeah.
dispatcher's like, no, sorry, there's nothing we can do, just press it. Like, be like, no, look, I want an officer to call me, like, or I want an officer to come out. Like, don't just accept, I mean, be respectful, right? But like, you don't need to just be like, oh, okay, bye. Like, if they're like, well, do you really need a call back? To be like, yes, I want to call. I mean, if you really want one, right? Like, yes, I want to call back. If you don't really need one, then that's fine. You don't have to say that. But like, if they're saying like, oh, do you want an officer to call you back? Yeah, I do. Okay, are you sure? Yeah, I do. Have them call me back, please. Have them call me back. Okay, like that may happen. So if it does, be a little assertive. It's okay. Like respectful but assertive, right? Like that's perfectly
Yeah.
okay. That's perfectly fine. So it's okay to do that sometimes, because sometimes unfortunately, like dispatch is no longer under the police umbrella anymore. They're their own entity. And so when they used to be our own umbrella, this would have been an easy thing to fix and be like, nope, you're going to do this, you're going to do this, you're going to do this. And now that's not how it is anymore. Unfortunately, they're their own entity. And so it takes a lot more, like this director has to talk to this director and they have to get together and they have to decide which policy is going to be followed. It's kind of annoying, but if I'm being 100% honest, but it's just the way it is. So,
Yeah.
just be a little
And-
assertive, right? Respectful, but assertive.
In Christina true fashion, she is going to say, Marnie, please have your constituents of Gilmore Park and anybody else sitting at the table contact the Salt Lake City Council and the mayor's office to let them know that you'd like to see improvements in 911.
They do,
And-
and they say call police.
But again,
Data.
I just want to be clear that this is not a data question I'm asking for, this is a budget question. So if you want to see improvements at any level for any of this response, then your community must step up to the plate and start advocating for themselves instead of
budget.
asking budget to be directed towards what is important to them. So that is
Okay.
what we hear at the
Yeah.
council. Our message is to all of our constituents.
I will just say, Detective, thank you so much for, it all seems like really fuzzy. Like
It's not fuzzy.
what are we supposed to, it seems like no one knows what the expectation is. Like frankly, should I be even calling the police for harassers if maybe or maybe not we're gonna call back? What is the expectation for response? What is the expectation for time? If maybe they'll come, maybe they won't. You can see where the social contract is a little bit
Sure.
unclear and maybe
Yeah.
broken.
Yeah. And
So I think it's kind of interesting. Thanks for the insight into learning how it works.
No, 100%. And it is so hard to be able to like make some kind of a promise of like, well, if you call in harassment, we should be able to respond within, an hour. Because the reality is there are certain days when we have like not much going on and you call us and we're going to respond right away. And then there's other days where we've got, I mean, I don't know if y'all saw the news last weekend, but holy crap, like our city had a homicide, and not just a homicide, but a horrible homicide. We had 3 people get shot, 2 people get stabbed, all in a weekend. Like it was insane. So those weekends, I
Gilchrist
promise you,
Avenues, Glendale Ballpark, across the board, right?
yeah, and I promise you, if you call in that weekend, like, hey, there's some kids that
No
doorbell
one's
did, it's not going to get responded to very quickly. It will get responded to. They always do. But realistically, we're probably not going to get there until 2 o'clock in the morning. So if you call in doorbell ditchers like, oh, they at 10 p.m., we're probably not going to get there till 2, 3, 4 in the morning if we had a bunch of shootings and stabbings and stuff. So that's the hardest part about it. And I completely understand what you're saying. Like but yeah, I guess the best thing is to just kind of educate a little bit, right? And like, so we can all understand like how, each other and how it works. And, but that doesn't mean that we can't improve in areas where we can improve, right? And so that's my goal, is to improve where we can. So.
And so I want to invite everyone at the table to understand how hard ELPCO is helping them, improve. Like they really are working with us to help them improve, because at least Detective Follows, I mean, I can't speak for everyone for certain because it's not factual, that they are super interested in, our POV from the street level that will actually help them make some changes. And Officer Fowler's in a good position to work with his lieutenants. It's not going to be perfect, and it could get worse and scary, the more that we work on it. And I just want to bring up a point to all of you for full transparency that have not been included on some of the emails we've been sharing, is that in West of East, where we have all agreed that we're going to look and try and do a traffic study analysis in order to write our CIP, capital improvement grant, that would be necessary to change the the engineering of that area. We're in contact with the engineers and transportation and all of these people to like do the background research that's important as constituents for us to actually win the lottery of CIP. We have been angering a lot of students who, well, we don't know if they're students. School-aged young folks who spend a lot of time off of campus and in our neighborhoods because of course we're intruding in their privacy and their, you know, perceived sort of control of that area as, you know, as their turf, for a lack of a different way. So, you know, we'll continue to do this. We've been really trying to be soft approach about it. And as always, we write our little letters, you know, dear student, you know, and I identify myself, we identify our neighborhood. I leave my actual phone number and email for people to contact me with complaints. And I let them know why we're taking videos in the area and what our end goals are. Sometimes it works with more reasonable young folks and sometimes it doesn't. So, we have seen a level of anger and violence that we have not seen ever before. So I caution everyone to make sure that when you are collecting the evidence you need for your police reports and things like that, to just, you know, be a little bit more careful than maybe we have in the past. Is there anything else you want to add? David here has a question.
I do want to say something real quick on that you just talked about, and I'll take that question. Just to echo what you just said, be cautious for sure. And then if you do call in something to dispatch that is lower priority, like, hey, there are some suspicious people hanging out behind East, and this is what they're doing. That's why it's suspicious, you know, whatever it may be. It looks like they're, you know, smoking weed in their car, or it looks like they're drinking, or, you know, whatever they're doing. And then let's say the situation changes and now they're attacking you or attacking someone or something. Call back and update dispatch on that, because the call becomes a higher priority. It gets answered quicker, and then we get there quicker, right? So, but if you just call in and then you just tell yourself, well, I already called it in, so they should be coming sometime. We may not be coming right away again because of the call volume that we have to deal with. So we respond to our priority calls first, and then obviously we go to the other calls after that, you know, and priority calls are definitely anything that would involve, you know, assaults, things like that. So if it bumps up, or, you know, if they're yelling and screaming at you, but they're across the street and they're not really bothering you, but they're just like, you know, calling you names or something like that, and you call that in as a harassment, and then they cross the street and they're now like pounding on your door or coming onto your property, we'll call 911 back and update us with that information so we can bump the call up to a higher priority and respond quicker so that we know what's going on. So that's important too, because sometimes people think like, well, I already called in, so it should, you know, they should get here quick, and then it's not a high priority call, so we don't get there as quick as we could if we had known the information. So hopefully that makes sense what I'm saying.
Great.
What was the question? Go ahead with the question.
I've got a comment and questions about some of the data. And I don't know if you can put that report back on there, but that report that talked about violent crimes and property crimes, and it showed that there had been a decrease. In fact, this was the lowest in the past 7 years. I now realize, as you said, doesn't include all of the information. It includes just those that are listed there. And I know there's, you've got your call logs or chronological logs. You've got initial contact reports that the police have. And all of that information is public. And I suppose it's maybe a manpower issue, but why couldn't this chart include all of the chronological logs, all of the initial contact reports that are made during the month of April, for example, or for year to date?
It's kind of a balance measure, right? 'Cause-
Well,
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. So
yeah,
we only
I
want to
know
report
what you
on
mean by
actual
balance
crime.
issue, but you know, we would, I guess, as a neighborhood, I would like, I mean, it's great to know about motor vehicle theft, but it'd also be good to know about just standard vandalism. Or just, I don't know how you classify the various calls that come in, but it would give a better view of what's being reported in the neighborhood if you had all of them rather than the ones that you just have online.
No, you're 100% right. And so kind of like I explained,
How can we do that?
Yeah, so kind of like I explained at the beginning, on the previous website that was not in-house, we had all the part 1 and part 2 crimes, and that means, essentially what that means is that included things like vandalism, um, um, those lower level crimes that aren't like necessarily property or violent, in those categories that we're looking at right now. And so the goal is to add those back in as a tracked crime thing. Again, just to roll this out, they grab the FBI data that the FBI tracks, they put that up for the neighborhood so that we can at least see that data. And then the plan is to expand on it, excuse me. And I can definitely follow up and see like, hey, what are the plans to do that? Or are we still planning on doing that? I'm getting from my community that they would like to have more information, kind of like what we used to have on the websites.
Yeah, that would be great. I don't know, when did they decide to just limit it to the FBI followed data?
So that was in February when they brought the website in-house to our own
Okay, so it's
people.
just been a couple months.
Yeah, well, so they
Right.
previewed it in February, so they've been
Okay.
working on it. So just, we're hurting for time here, and because we don't meet again for 2 months, we have a lot to cover. So there were some other things that we wanted to go over, Detective Follows, which we can wait on, and we can, just ask some more questions as we're working on things together, if that's okay with you. But there are 2 follow-up questions on the crime stats.
If you could get back to us about what their plan is.
Yeah.
For all of them, it would be great.
That's exactly, we're thinking the same, David, is that like, we would like to see a timeline, and also statistically thinking like we tend to do here at this table. The mayor is always saying that crime is going down, but I mean, is it true that overall crime is going down, or just the FBI list of crime going down? If you could check into that and see how we can access that information. Can we really look and see what the overall crime data is in ELPCO and maybe citywide? That would be helpful.
Yeah, well, just to clarify real quick, the data that's on the website
Mhm.
is not the only data that we track, right? So
Yeah.
it's not the only data that the FBI reports on, just FYI. So
Mhm.
we track everything. So when we say like crime is going down, we're not just talking about what we're looking at on the website. We're talking about
Okay,
everything overall. So
great, that's great. Mhm.
yeah, just
Good
to
to hear.
clarify that. So
That's
again, this is public information that
Mhm.
is easily accessible. I worked at a few different police departments, and this is the only department I know of that puts their crime stats so readily, easily viewable to the public for free and just extremely accessible. So they're just trying to provide a service. And again, we'll expand on that service and make it more categories so that we can get it so that the public can get a better snapshot of what's going on. But essentially, um, we track everything for sure. So just to clarify that.
Okay, well, 2 things before we move on. Again, we always like to give the kudos where the kudos are due. Chief Brown did hear us, and I thanked him in person. We had many community councils reach out to him to thank him in person for having your analysts make sure that the calls for service were also available on a 10-minute increment, which helps us in our neighborhood so we don't over respond. Like if there's an accident, we know the police are on their way instead of us having to go out and provide first aid, which does happen quite often in our neighborhood. So thank you for that. Pass that on again. And then also, oh gosh, there was something else that I can't remember. So like I said, we have a list, so next time we're in touch with you, we will hit some more details on those lists if that's okay. And we're gonna move on to ELPCO business. So thanks for coming, and
Yeah.
I'm sure we'll be chatting really soon.
Yeah, I really appreciate the dialogue tonight. Thank you all. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Detective.
Have a good night, Detective.
Have a good night.
Okay, so as I just mentioned, we are not meeting in June. We have decided that we, meaning your your officers have decided that we have a lot of things that we're working on, bylaws, all of these things that we decided as a group that we wanted to focus on. So we're taking June off, and then of course July always coincides with the Pioneer holiday. So we've been meeting a lot off schedule with all of the new things that are coming online. So we're going along tonight to sort of cover everything. And that was a great discussion, so I'm glad we got to have that. But we'll finish up here, and then we'll only be reaching out to you for our loose meetings and our any of these like extra meetings that we have to have in order to keep up with all the things that the mayor's office is throwing at us. So I'm gonna move on with the agenda real quick, to ELPCO business committee reports. Does the 9th and 9th committee have anything that we want to report on specifically?
No, we were just talking about, communication.
Yeah.
We can talk more about that.
Okay, so the second thing is the historical committee. Does the historical committee, David, have anything that they would like to report on specifically? Okay, so obviously our land use chairs, both Alicia, CB and Alan are out of the country. And they're just incredible land use people, so we're just so happy to have them. But they have missed the meeting that we went to with Nick Norris from Planning Director regarding the rollout of the change from land use zoning to form-based zoning. We were very happy to meet with other community councils, our land use committee, with different people around the city, because I was interested in hearing what different geographies are going to struggle with in terms of this rollout. And we know specifically in ELPCO, because it's going to affect our business districts, both our 9th and 9th business district, as well as our 11th East business district, burgeoning business district, that there is going to be some push out, especially on parking, regarding density and economic development of businesses who want the parking, but residents who also rely on the parking. Okay, so our wonderful folks here, Marshall and Amy, attended that meeting, and because they represent the area right around 9th and 9th, we were hoping that maybe you had brainstormed some thoughts about how we would like to present this to that public, residential and business.
I'll let you go, Amy.
Well, first of all, I think it's really complicated, and I am not a subject matter expert in it, and it was hard to hear.
Yeah.
But I do think it'd be interesting to, if we could sort of summarize information. And the question Marshall and I had is our communication to the community basically this is what's happening and try to make it as positive as possible? Or are they still in a period where they want feedback from?
Okay.
I didn't get that impression.
So this has not hit the 45-day public, where community councils get the pre-access to providing our regular community, our community feedback, right? So we're not there yet.
Okay.
So what Nick wanted to accomplish, and why we were so urgently throwing together a meeting, is because, as he said, this is a once in a generational zoning change, right? We haven't seen anything like this since the mid-90s, which is actually a down zone, which potentially did contribute to a lot of our affordable housing issues, because it really took away density. But now we have affordable housing crisis, we need to add density back in, or at least ELPCO has agreed as a board that we want to support controlled and thoughtful density, in our neighborhoods, okay? So this element is only, how are we going to do extra duty to get our community, especially on the corridors, the residents and the businesses that will be most affected by, it's always parking, right? It's always going to be parking. Going to be most affected by this, involved in the community discussion to provide,
Feedback.
right?
Okay, so
So this is just
yeah.
about how to
Got it.
engage a feedback community
Got it.
among our folks here in our neighborhoods.
Okay.
That's first element. Marshall was really brilliant when we were talking on the side. I think he was like, why don't we just set up a tent out there on the corner, right, where we're super visible,
Yeah.
and have some people manning the tent,
Yeah.
We can.
I thought-
there's a whole bunch of different ways.
Right?
Yeah, but I thought that was a good idea. Marshall now is sad that he mentioned that, because to get sit with the tent.
But part of that though, to be effective, we gotta make up a flyer or something
Mhm.
that is, pros, cons.
Right.
Shows contextually
Yeah,
what could happen.
that's.
But you can't speculate.
Well,
You just gotta say, here's what
we can potentially get hopes from the planning community on
goes.
this.
Yeah,
right?
I don't know a
because
lot
I
about
can't
That's the
answer.
thing, so just to take, so this is very complicated,
It
right?
really
And I've
is.
been following it for a while because I've been working so closely with Central Ninth, which modeled this rollout, really.
And
So
they
Central
consider
Ninth-
it a success.
Well,
He said,
who?
Nick,
Well, Nick says that Central Ninth
I
considers
understand
it
that,
a
I know,
success, but, you know, all the walking tours and all the fire lane issues and all the
Yeah.
parking issues that we've been working on in collaboration with Central Ninth.
Yeah.
And the business in the district do not necessarily 100% consider it a success.
Yeah.
So the real, my temperature gauge is, it works for some people and not for everyone, and we should probably try and qualify that if we cannot quantify it at least, like, you know, who's gonna be affected. 100% we know already from working with our 9th and 9th constituents, business constituents.
Yeah,
it's right.
Through the road work, is that they are gonna be infuriated by the potential of
losing more parking.
losing more parking to something coming down the line. You know, as we've all communicated before, parking is like, you know, all of the rings of Dante's Inferno whenever people across, you know, people who are used to single family homes and
Yeah.
plenty of parking on their streets, right? So we just have to figure out how to convey this, I think, as a community council to our constituents, exactly what Marshall just said. What are the pros? What are the cons?
Mhm.
What problems get solved by introducing multi-use zoning?
When's this deliverable due?
Well, again, we haven't heard from Nick from the planning commission or planning division, when they're going to actually roll it out. He's looking from this input from us, right? I'm taking notes from what you've already said, and we're already passing it on to him. The first thing when I met with Nick on this, I said, we must have both our business and our residential community in the same room to discuss this. I think that's important because they need to be able to hear one another speak, much in the same way we invited all the community councils that have different geographical concerns to be in the same room, to hear that it's just not the same downtown as it is in ELPCO or Central Ninth, right?
Mhm.
So, you know, as we're all ruminating on this, I know you missed this meeting, wait, you were there.
I was there.
Oh, yeah, Jeanette was there. So a lot of people who, it was very loud, let's just say
It was
that.
loud.
Got very loud. So there was, you know, it wasn't the content as much as how do we do our very best at engaging our public?
Does the city, sorry, go ahead. Does the city have anything that talks about kind of like contextually
They will.
this form based? and
They
form-
will have pages and pages.
Oh, all right.
on-
Well, that's good. As long as we got that kind
As soon as
of.
it's ready, as soon as it's developed, we'll get the same, you know, planning package that we always get, just like when we did the conditional use bar recently and the, you know, the Lake Street Minden Court stuff that we're working on. It's a very in-depth staff report that will help us understand, the whys and, the considerations.
And then next question is when is 11th East? 11th East.
Is zoned,
Yeah, that's-
residential, commercial,
Yeah,
residential business.
So when is that
RBZ.
node
Mhm.
gonna be, is that, it's gonna be in a different phase of that form base? Oh, it's gonna be the whole city. Oh,
Yes.
So they're just gonna go.
But again, you know, it really, as Nick, I think is explained to us, is like, there's not a billion people applying for building permits to increase density
Yeah,
all over, right? And in ELPCO, land is expensive. It's not
Yeah.
like people are gonna rush in there and suddenly, I mean, we do have some folks, right? We know the corner of where next to the High Flight and also Roland Hall is coming online. So, I mean,
that's.
stuff
gonna be
is
big one.
happening,
Oh,
right? But so just, you know, just take note, like sometimes people get afraid because I think there's gonna be this rush and suddenly we're gonna have 3-story buildings all up and down our corridors, but
No, yeah.
just, you know,
Do we know anything that's gonna happen? Is there anything that's gonna happen in Rowan Hall?
that's on our list,
Oh,
but you can.
So really quickly,
Mhm.
the school will remain as it is for at least 2 years, maybe longer. The property is under contract, whatever that means, with anonymous buyer. And, so I think they're kind of, limited in what they can say based on their contract is
So I'm
who they
assuming
sold it to or what.
developer.
I,
Not that I mean, it is
Right.
what it is.
right, so that's all I know.
Fantastic. Thank you for doing that. I'm glad I remembered to ask you. Does anybody have any questions about this? And for the record, again, right, this is just about community engagement. Please feel free to bring, all of your thoughts, all your ideas, because, community engagement's hard. But if we can do this well, we might be able to mend some of the fraction between our businesses and our residents with these kind of changes that come out, if we're good at community engagement. Maybe not citywide, but here in East Liberty, similar to what we did with the conditional use bar, just helping people understand the context in which we operate.
And I do think it'd be interesting to also use as an opportunity to say, look at all these programs the city has. You can get an e-bike voucher, you can flip your
Correct.
strip for $3 a square foot. You can have your brick, you can get on the brick, like earthquake thing. All those things so that people say the city is actually looking out for a very livable, safe city. I would love to have an alley program where they subsidize some alley carport buildings so that those residents nearest to the Night South corridor could have alternative parking, just those kind of creative ideas. So maybe we can't affect the zoning per
Right.
se, but we can think about, make them have good thoughts about the city.
Which is, so based on conversations again with Amy, I did testify for the budget, because this is something that's really coming up for this budget hearing, the last one, that we need the improvements to the alley in order to be able to access the carports, the existing parking that is already there, especially as folks bring in their ADUs and things like that, that we rely on those alleys. They're not just like,
Decorative. or
they're not
like-
just decorative things. We rely on those for commerce and also to make
Yeah.
sure that there's parking for
Yeah.
our businesses and things like that. So thank you, Amy, for that. And that did turn into, a
Good,
budget
good.
report. Okay, so then I wanna ask a few more questions just to make sure that we've covered our business. Let's see. Form-based public stuff, we have to get with, there seems to be a stall of our construction on 11th East with Cody. We're not seeing much movement with any
Yeah,
of his
it's-
enterprises. So we need to have Alicia talk about this. Alicia, that is her area, so, new Alicia,
Oh, yeah.
and then, so we have. Are we all good with old business? So we've covered up this, because we have a couple items of new business. We have a website update from Jeanette.
Yeah, we don't have too much of an update other than
We're just waiting.
Back. Yeah.
Like, that's an
So,
Waiting to wait.
we've uploaded everything onto the Dropbox for our person that we're working with.
We paid.
And we paid, so.
It's kind of a
Is there
hurry
an
rate
estimate
process.
when that person would have her work done?
Well,
Just-
we were a little slow on our end, so now she's moved to other projects. And then she'll get back on ours. Hopefully soon.
Okay,
Yeah, so we just, it's been kind of a hurry up and wait, and we'll just wait, like,
Okay.
we'll just get it when we can. Thank you, Jeanette, for, Jeanette is such an amazing
it's gonna be so
organizer.
great to actually have a
She's
website.
so great, I know, so good. And thanks for everybody for freaking sending your pictures. And we are gonna have to do a little updates. We're gonna do a little updates.
Oh, yeah, I'm good.
Although
To the
you have
bias,
sunglasses on
right?
still,
Oh,
so.
The only one I could find
I'm
You.
was it with.
I'm wanting my
mustache.
sunglasses on.
That's his
I wanna be,
personality.
I wanna be an
I know.
incognito as I can, believe me.
I'll send you some photos of Marshall.
Oh, no, you don't need to send those photos.
Okay, so, again, thank you, Jeanette, for just, being the totally organized part of my,
No problem.
what do you call it, a hot mess? Appreciate you. Okay, so then, but last and not least, we have an update from Marnie on the issues, the very important and expensive issues that we've been having at Garden Park Ward, which is the reasoning why their campus is still closed to the public. And then we'll just finish up with a few questions, a few more introductions, and we're done for the night. So go ahead, Marnie.
Sorry, I'm truly dealing with a noise complaint on the Garden Park Ward at the moment, so I was like, Detective Follows, stay there.
It's been a lot.
I'm sorry, but you guys have heard a lot of this. but I'll speak for just the leadership of the ward. We actually met with them just to kind of find out what they knew. And you know, we wanted to share with them the perspective that we've collected, that a lot of people see that place as, you know, a kind of a gem in the community, and I know it's my own personal part for me. I pretended that, and you know, and it, you know, and just being a member of that congregation, I also know that they are unusually like inclusive, and that's why I like going to that church there. But be that as it may, we were surprised to learn that they didn't really have any feedback. They didn't know anything, that they hadn't, so two of the leadership are lawyers, but they just hadn't, they were questioning, you know, why there hadn't been any kind of charges pressed when I think was $50,000 worth of damage done to the, I mean, they ruined paintings, couches, glass, stained glass. Yeah, oh, yeah. And they have the person on these people on camera, I think, no?
From what they told
Okay, I'm
us,
like-
right? From what they told us, that they provided a certain amount of evidence that seemed like it would rise to the
Indisputable.
level. Well, it seems like nothing is ever indisputable, right? It seems like it would rise to the level of getting a conviction or some sort of
Did they arrest anybody?
retribution. No,
No,
according to them.
according to them,
The church.
they have a confession. It was 2 ninth graders, I think
Right.
is what we heard.
Again, we want to be careful, like
Oh,
what
they're
we
juvenile.
say public, you know, because
Yeah,
again, it's juveniles
Yeah,
and.
there's a little bit of benevolence
Right.
in
Yeah,
there.
but I-
Well, there's a little bit of-
This is the police
There's a little bit of
that-
non-disclosure since they're
Yeah,
juveniles.
just like,
Mhm.
I'm not sure, but I guess what my concern is that we've had many break-ins. And we weren't really paying attention because we're like, oh, the police, the police came, they're investigating this. But when there are no consequences, people are emboldened, and it got worse and worse and worse. And here we are, at this point, and
I'm sorry.
still not having transparency about what's happening with this. Why are we not at least slapping the hands, usually the victim does get to have some say, and I think the church would probably tend to be more forgiving and not want to ruin anyone's life, but to be told like, there's not enough evidence.
Who told you that?
So again, I'm gonna have to step in here
That was-
because I really don't want to, I want to make sure that we get clear, concise evidence passed on, because this is recorded to our constituents. So,
Yeah.
Words matter, specifics matter, right?
Yes.
So what we were told is that there was concern on behalf of the leadership of the church that the due diligence wasn't done in order to obtain the necessary evidence
Mhm.
to get a conviction. And that there was we hear this a lot, we hear this a lot in the press. We've actually been hearing this all the time in ELPCO. Again, words matter, not all the time. Often in ELPCO, that the upfront circumstances in which the response from the police department did not rise to the level of a conviction from a prosecutor's office, right? Regardless if they are juveniles or not. And we would hope that, that we are doing other types of reform other than punitive reform with juveniles, right?
Yeah.
So this is a very different issue. It becomes a prosecutor versus the city police, right? Which I have expressed to you at different last meetings that we've been to, that there's been a concerted effort on the office of Sim Gill to train community councils. He's been here at our community council to help us understand that that sometimes it's an excuse and sometimes it's real. Sometimes there's enough evidence and for whatever reason, it just doesn't get to them or not. Okay, so thank you, Marnie, for presenting this. Again,
I guess I'd like to what I would just say is, it wasn't transparent. There's some confusion and we just want more information.
what did you say? The social contract is obscure, right? Like
Fuzzy.
it's
Okay, so
fuzzy,
I'm
right?
sorry, I'm really dumb, but why are we talking about this? I don't get this. I don't
Okay.
understand, I understand there's victims and there's people that perpetrated a crime and that sucks and you didn't get a great, the church didn't get a great response. Are we as council members for ELPCO trying to learn how to talk to the public about how the police respond to instances and they don't, they do?
that statement at the start.
Right.
Now I know what.
Yeah, like, I'll just answer your question
Yeah.
real quick, because it's
Great.
really simple in that, what we have learned, right? Through all these trial and errors and things that we bump up to against as non-professionals or we are not, this is not our world, right? So what we learned by trial and error is that, Garden Park Ward is not the only organization around the city that might have issues along these lines with the fuzziness between our local
Law enforcement
police
officers.
and the prosecutor, the people who prosecute crime.
Okay.
So we were lucky to meet with a prosecutor who is going to come to one of our next meetings to explain to us and our constituency how, when a person like the ward feels like maybe the police hasn't done their job, how they can get the information to the prosecutor directory for a screening, rather than having to go directly through the police and just hope that their case gets screened. So that's why we wanted to present it to you.
Okay.
But tonight, why we wanted to bring it up and be really clear is that, they reached out to the community, Garden Park Ward, and said, hey, this is happening, can anyone help? So these two lovely people, right, are really interested in helping them. Of course, Garden Park Ward is the victims and they have to lead, but they have the support of David, who we know is really great with trying to get the proper police reports through grandma and otherwise, and Marnie, who is advocating as not only the member of the neighborhood, but also a member of the church. So thank you both, right? That's all the information we have to share with you tonight. We're not even clear just about all of the things that we were being told by the leadership. We can never say that that is factual. It is simply a legend.
A perspective.
And how we are interested in helping our constituents, this falls in line with that, similar to what David did in terms of making the school district data available to the entire city who might need it in order to air their concerns. So this is a similar thing. We'll talk about it in a board meeting or something and decide how we want to go forward, right? So
Transparency. I'm just kidding.
if you're good, right? Are you
I'm
good?
totally fine. Yeah.
It's good to see your heat rise a little bit, Marnie. I've really
I'm
enjoyed
actually
seeing that part
angry
of
about
you.
it, because I was kind of like, I just expect things to work. But so it did surprise me to sit down with them and hear that frustration.
Well, I just think you've been a very good advocate for your community, and I want to say thank you.
I have a comment that I'd like to at least go back to Garden Park Ward, is that their property is an oasis in the neighborhood, and it was especially helpful to lots of people during 2020, during COVID. And it's, like you said, is a gem, and ultimately, while they have control over how they open and close their property to the general public, as a neighborhood, I would love to make them feel so comfortable that they could leave their property open during daylight hours for people. And that's, I think, should be our goal.
I even used to leave it open at night.
Thank you, David. That's exactly what my hope is too. So thank you for voicing that. And but again, you both have, because you're both right there. This is, I am very happy to let you guys lead and have conversations, and Marnie brings up a lot of good points of bishops, something I would not know, not being part of this religion,
circle or
right,
whatever,
or religion in general at LDS, is that bishops, they're just people who serve. They have full-time jobs, and then they do this other full-time job in addition. So one thing the police did mention to me is that they didn't get the stuff they needed when they needed it. But again, policing perspective is very different than full-time doctor / bishop perspective, or old lady standing on the street. Just really perspectives are different and we need to honor all those perspectives. So in that, right, I think that we're done with the meeting tonight, but
Hi.
did you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks for letting me, I've learned so much about, ELPCO.
Mhm.
Awesome. Well, I'm Natalie Pinckney. I'm running to be the Democratic nominee for Salt Lake County Council. Jim Bradley is retiring from the county after serving 24 years. So there will be a primary, both a Republican and a Democratic primary. So I'm running on the Democratic side, got first place at a convention, but we do have a runoff next month. Running on financial empowerment and affordability. I created a financial empowerment center with Mountain America Credit Union in South Salt Lake, where I currently serve on the city council. I'm in my second term. I have these to hand out to folks. If you are a Democrat, if you're not a Democrat, if you know a Democrat, I know folks are doing different things this year. When it comes to voting, but wanted to come, and introduce myself. I do have signs not with me, but if you go online and request a yard sign, we will get one delivered to you. So wanted to come to introduce myself. My website information is on there. I'm all over social media, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok even. So trying that out. We'll see how it goes.
She, she
yeah.
does actually call people in the community to talk. I just have been really bad about returning.
No, you're good.
calls.
No, you're totally fine. I'm sorry if I keep calling over and
you're
over
great.
again. I am
Great.
campaigning full time, so that's what I do all day. I just call people for votes or for money. That's kind of one of the two. So, but
Natalie, you're an at-large, you're the at-large?
so I'm at large for South Salt Lake currently, and then now I'm running at large for the county. So from one at large to another at large, but vastly different populations, and reach. So this is the whole entire county from the avenues all the way to Bluffdale, Harriman. So,
Wow.
yeah.
How are you,
Yeah, hold on, yeah.
how are you different than your opponent?
How am I different than my opponent? Great question. I believe my policies are really timely for the moment. So we've both had policies, we're both elected, but mine are mostly focused on kind of basic needs and helping people for generations to come. So financial empowerment came because my first year was on the council was 2020. So, it was normal for 3 months and then all of a sudden it wasn't normal. And, I'm hearing about people who can't pay their water bills, the utility bills. So that's what really kind of came out of how do we get solutions to issues that people have right now that's pressing? And I feel like that's the role of the government when, I shouldn't say they're taking your taxpayer dollars, but if we're gonna give them taxpayer dollars, they should invest in our community and invest in our future. So with that, the Civilian Review Board and glass recycling, those are all to me really solution-based issues that also can scale, that also get to a problem and also gets to the root problem. As you guys talk about crime, right? And we're thinking about our youth, like how are we investing into their community and not just their education, their parents. And that's where our Financial Empowerment Center are able to really think about generational wealth that we can start to create for families. So yeah, no, thank you. So that's why I think I'm different. I just think especially for the time right now, we need someone who can focus on the issues that are most pressing to people, and I'm already working on it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I like your play on your last name and the pink color.
Yeah, pink was a color, me like the body part, So, yeah, if you see pink yard signs, that's me.
Well, thank you for coming.
Yeah.
I really appreciate that. We have these meetings and, our elected officials can show up whenever they want to.
And this is
We
so
don't have to
educational,
invite them.
Yeah.
Our want to be elected officials can show up whenever. We don't have to invite them. So thank you for doing this.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's so cool y'all get to meet at Tracy Aviary because it's the coolest location so far.
So also from really understanding what's going on over here. Are you planning on running for some, are you gonna run for office? Or you just seem so incredibly invested that we would love to know more about you.
Yeah, I think Salt Lake is one of the best cities in the whole nation. My partner and I both work full-time remote. We both have doctorate degrees. And we live here, family would huge draw. Yeah, it's an amazing city. Yeah, and then no, I'm essentially attempting to do due diligence on whether or not I would be interested in running for the District 5 council seat.
I figured.
Yeah, and then essentially do my personal values align with the communities in District 5. So it's I live in the ballpark, so it's the ballpark, Central 9th, and then the East Liberty Park. They're the main community houses now. And so far, it does seem like my values do align, yeah. And then I'm meeting with Councilwoman Mono tomorrow to 2 months to get a meeting. I think that's also what I'm interested in.
Mhm.
Maybe being a little more accessible. Yeah.
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 So I'm so happy to hear this because we would
Yeah.
really like to get to know our prospective candidates in advance. And because we, District 5 is complex. We have made a concerted effort here. Since I became chair, we started something called D5 and Friends. Because at the community council level, what, frankly, we see is a lot of competition between individuals who are leading councils who maybe don't get along very well. Like, there's a lot of beef, right? And, to be frank, ELPCO is not interested in the beef. We're interested in collaborating and working together with people. And sometimes that draws some hostility, like we are breaking down silos. And that has been inefficient for us. We could do a lot better work if we weren't working against sort of these, power things, distributions. So, we would love to invite you. I think I can speak for my team to sit down with us and sort of understand what is important to us in our specific East Liberty community, but also what we see in attempting to collaborate both East and West.
Yeah.
So, we'd love to schedule something like that with you.
Yeah, that'd be like really helpful. Yeah.
All right, does anybody else have anything they want to add before we adjourn this long 2-hour
Do we
meeting?
need to hear from Violet? You feel like?
Is she still there, Violet? I'm assuming it's Violet. She didn't answer before, and I.
Hi.
Yay. Hello, Violet. Would you like to
Yeah.
chat with us about
Thanks
anything
for
that's
making
important
it
to
for the
you?
whole meeting. too.
Oh, no problem. I'm the city council constituent liaison intern for District 5. So I was just here to kind of take notes and observe the meeting. But if you guys have any questions or concerns that you would like me to pass on, I can also do that.
Oh, great. Okay, did you hear earlier, what has been the major concern that's being voiced to us? Were you here during that part of the meeting?
The concerns regarding safety and crime reporting, that part, or?
No, really, honestly, we're getting sort of bombarded with conflict of interest, complaints against Councilman Mono that have been really difficult for us to navigate because, of course, we super want to support our councilmen, our elected officials. We have a policy of being really positive and supportive of the people who've been elected to represent us. But we just don't know how to really navigate that because we don't know what's real. We don't have any ability to collect data on this or, create a platform around it. But for whatever reason, a lot of toes are being stepped on and a lot of people are telling us about it. And we have not yet been able to figure exactly how to get that across to the city council staff and, in general.
Okay, I will definitely make sure that is shared. Is there anything else?
So it not only extends to Councilman Mono, but it also extends, and again, this is hearsay on my part, I haven't actually analyzed this myself, to our D5 planning commissioner, who I have not yet met, but apparently he also works for the same company that that Councilman Mono, I don't know, owns or something, that is, works with a lot of our developers on the 900 South Corridor. So, again, whether or not this is real, we are not alleging anything and we are certainly not questioning something that's outside of our expertise. We did mention to our constituents that I'm just gonna read back to you what I said earlier, that we need to put a little bit of a distance between us and this problem because for whatever reason people feel like we are also complicit in these kind of conflict of issue. We can't do that as a community council. We have to remove ourselves from these issues. And more specifically, that conflict of interest issues are dependent on the city attorney to make their decisions on. And, we respect the decisions of the city attorney, but public perception is everything in this game. So we want to be very clear that it would be super helpful if public perception could be clarified on the issue. That was very long-winded, but hopefully you understood the bigger
Mhm.
picture in which we're trying to
Of the
solve this problem.
issue, the conflict of interest
Mhm.
issue, yeah.
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 Does that make sense to you, Violet?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you so
Thanks,
much for
Violet.
sitting through our meeting.
No
Have a good
problem.
night. Okay,
You
take
too.
care. Bye.
you.
Okay, so Christine, I just put myself out there in a big way. I hope that this helps us, right? Thank you for, again, to our constituents that are no longer online, but also our board members who have been trying to figure out a way to kind of walk this tightrope between, public perception and reality that we are unclear about. This meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Did you work?
I've got an